All right, welcome back to Divine Alignment. I am so excited. I am joined with the beautiful Liv today. We have been friends for a while now. We met through the Instas, and it's just, you guys are going to love this conversation today because I knew I had to bring Liv on because not only is everyone going through these crazy death and rebirth cycles right now, but Liv and I are both coming out of our Saturn returns. And so I know that we are going to have so much to share, so much to dive into. But before we get into all of that, I would just love for you to just introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are, what you do, who you help. Yeah.
Well, hi everyone. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to kind of open up this conversation because I feel like a lot, like you said, a lot of people are going through this rebirth. So hopefully this can be helpful and something that would have helped me probably if I had heard this sooner. But as you said, I am Liv. I am a naturopath, a classic reader, 7D healer, intuitive. These bios always throw me because I'm like, I could name 20 different titles. I have marketer, CEO, whatever. We do all the things, as you know, as an entrepreneur, but essentially I help women heal so that they can get back to feeling delicious in their bodies and magnetic in their life, kind of letting go of all of the programming and everything that has made them not feel fully aligned in their life or has held them back up until this point, and seeing how that manifests for them both emotionally and physically. So essentially, that is what I do. I have lots of different modalities, but that is what I'm on this earth to do. So hopefully we can help you guys do that today.
Yes, Liv is amazing. And it's always so beautiful to see. I know that we kind of have a similar path of like starting off in the very physical with like the doing. I mean, you went to naturopathic, we both went to naturopathic school. You became a doctor, I became a nutritionist, and, really working on the physical level. And then both dove into the spirituality and the the energetic side of things, which really honestly, like, you guys need to follow Liv on Instagram, and you'll see as well. I mean, it's like you just can't have the physical without the spiritual and the energetic. Like that's what's really shifted everything. So, I mean, before we dive into all of that, I would just love to hear a little bit about like your journey and your story and like what led you to doing all of these amazing things that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. And I feel like, well, we probably have a similar story of the physical was only taking me so far. And I am a huge believer in like 100% food is medicine. Yes, we need to take care of, our liver and our gut health and our hormones and all of that physically. But I'm a five line in human design, which basically means like we're the inquisitive leaders finding the answers, the puzzle pieces together. And I remember being so frustrated, being like, well, I'm gluten free, dairy free. I spend thousands on supplements. I do IV drips. Like, why am I still bloated all the time? Why is my skin so horrible? Like, this doesn't make sense. So I was always on a hunt for the answers. I refused to accept that that was the way I was just going to live. And I was like, no, there has to be something I'm missing. There has to be something more. And so that's kind of what allowed me to discover more of the energetic, emotional stuff that might be going on. And it was through opening up to that spiritual journey that I finally feel like I found all the puzzle piece answers that I wasn't seeing before. And what I noticed was so many people were coming to me being like, well, Liv, why am I not healed yet? I'm doing all of the things. I'm doing all of the things. And when I realized that, oh, all of the things also includes the emotional, energetic work, it's that bridge that brings things all together. So it was only then that my chronic fatigue went away. It was only then that my bloating fully went away and it wasn't like an everyday thing. It was only then that I actually started absorbing the nutrients in my food. Like we shouldn't be getting bloated after, cooked broccoli or avocado or like innocuous things, right? And it's because it's not the food, like, assuming we're eating the clean food. And, cleared up my skin and all of that. And then now when I see people like, as a naturopath, I don't just look at the physical. I bring in that because that was the missing puzzle piece for me. And I see it as a missing puzzle piece for so many other people. And do not get me wrong, it has been a journey for sure. I would say the emotional work tends to be the harder work to do. The energetic work is the harder work to do because it requires you to look at yourself and feel the uncomfortable things. And it's not as easy as just like popping in omega-3, which yes, do that, but also do this. And so I think I was also meant, I don't want to say meant to suffer, but I think we're all through our illness or chronic diseases, whatever it is, to learn something out of and to get something out of. And I don't think if I would have fully healed by, just going gluten-free, that I'd be able to serve the people that I serve now or help them. So, I mean, thankful for my journey, but also it was a long, like 4 or 5 years.
So would you like to, do you feel called to share some of those tools and techniques and what some of the emotional work looked like for you that really made the difference and shifted the needle for you?
So I can be fully candid, yes. You don't mind me sharing, like, whatever, yeah?
Please, share it all, share it all.
I felt like I needed to go deeper, but I wasn't sure how to go deeper. I was like, okay, I know I'm being called to do deeper work. And I was like, I don't know how to get there. And someone that I followed kept mentioning mushrooms, and they kept like popping up in my life. And I was like, you know what? I feel called to go on a mushroom journey. So I had talked to her about it, and she was someone I respected and knew. So I felt safe to kind of like go there with her. She's like, you know what? Why don't, before you go on this journey, I think you would really benefit from an Akashic reading. I was like, an Akasha what? Like, it's like no clue. And this was like early, like I was just spiritually awakening. I barely didn't know anything, let alone whatever that was. She's like, no, I think it'll really help. I have a friend, I think you would help before our journey to get one. And I was like, you know what? I am open to anything. If you can give me answers from above that like I don't know, I'm all for it. And I think it takes sometimes hitting almost like a rock bottom to be kind of open to these types of things. If you would have told me years before that someone was going to go into some records in the 7th dimension and tell me what's wrong, I would have laughed because I was very science-based. So I was like, you know what? Fine, let's do it. So excited for this reading. Definitely one of the top 3 moments that changed my life forever. I had never felt so fully seen, so fully understood, and to have someone sit across the screen from me and tell me, well, this is why you feel this way. Oh, you probably feel this way too. Oh, and you're struggling with this. Oh, and you probably felt this way as a kid. And I just started bawling, and I'm crazy. Like, it's like someone was in my soul, and I was like, oh my God, everything you said makes sense. Oh my God, you understand what it feels like. Because I feel like, yes, people might struggle with the same health things or life things, but when someone can describe it exactly how it's feeling, you just feel seen on such a deeper level. And when I did, I was just like, oh my God. And then, yeah, this is what you need to do to heal. And this is like the kind of the journey and what I think would help you. And I was like, oh, there must be something to this. There's no way this person could know this about me. And so when I say like I was very like close at this point, this was like my psychic gifts weren't open. I was open to receiving this information, but like would not have believed you probably if I hadn't hit that rock bottom. If I had that reading, kind of started implementing meditation, focusing on the crown, connecting with guides, and like opening up myself more spiritually. So then the next week later, I was like journey with her, and so she came over to my house, and we had a full mushroom journey. It was like 7 hours long. I feel like I let go of so much emotional stuff, and I feel like it was the bridge that allowed me to go from knowing I needed help to feeling comfortable and safe to allow that, and kind of like cracked me open. And I'm not saying everyone needs to do this in order to do emotional work, but to be honest, I feel like that's what cracked me open. And that's what allowed everything to kind of go a lot faster and go kind of quantum leap, as like the trendy word that is used now. And it was only through doing that I fully felt my soul, I think, for the first time. And I just remember feeling consciousness, and I'm sure you probably felt this, that kind of energy is almost very overwhelming. It is like this pure love. It is pure. I just remember feeling also so hot and sweating so much, like a sweating kind of release. And I remember just talking out everything that had hurt me, all the stuff from my little girl. I remember I was bawling my eyes out because this little girl had been shut down so much in her life for being so sensitive. for being an empath and being told not to cry every time. And I remember just crying and releasing. And I think that is what cracked me open and allowed me then to do more of like the trauma release work that I did after that. That definitely helped, but allowed me to go deeper. So I would say that in the Akashic record really cracked me open that month. And then everything I did after that was more like, oh, now that I've identified these things, now that I'm cracked open, let's deal with all this stuff now that we've opened Pandora's box, if you will, to release it, heal it, feel it, and integrate kind of like a new way of being. Does that make sense?
I have full chills. Thank you for sharing all of that. I didn't know that about your story and your journey, and I think
this I've never talked about it on a podcast, to be honest, or with my. So you're getting the first scoop, but like I'm gonna be honest, and again, not saying that everyone needs to do that, but I'm just saying definitely psilocybin was something that kickstarted it for me for sure.
yes, well, thank you for sharing with me and the audience, because I think that I totally relate. And I again, like you said, it's definitely not something for everyone. I say with any type of um, plant medicine, I really believe that you will receive the call if you're supposed to do it. But for me, it was when I did mushrooms, like I did mushrooms for the very first time, like probably it was like a year and a half ago at this point. And I'm still integrating those lessons because it's exactly like you say. It's like literally it's like downloads on downloads on downloads. And it's like, it's impossible to integrate and do everything that the mushrooms reveal to you in one day or 1 week or one night. But that's so beautiful. And I just like feel all of that as you're sharing. Like it truly is like this, it's like opening up the portal to your soul of like, these are all of your demons that you have not dealt with. So that's really beautiful. I'm really curious, when you did that first Akashic reading as well, what were some of the things that he shared with you of like, you said they told you like everything to do. What were some of those things?
I definitely had to get out of the current relationship I was in. Mm-hmm. That was definitely, and they didn't really say like, go leave this person, but essentially, without saying it very bluntly, like directly, like you know the answer in your heart and you're asking it for a reason type of thing. So I feel like it was more a guidance of how to come back to myself and how to tap more into my intuition. Like start meditating every single day. Like before this, I was like, oh yeah, meditation on Headspace. Very different than crown meditation. And so like that's something like if you want to heal, like you need to start connecting every day. If you want to know, like start connecting. And like I know that sounds simple, but it's a muscle you have to flex. It's like if someone wants to get fit, okay, then go to the gym, you know, regularly, consistently. So I started flexing that spiritual muscle, connecting, you know, meditating every day, leaving things that were not aligned. And I feel like I feel it was more like the validation that I needed from someone who didn't know me that gave me the personal power to actually do what I feel like I know I needed to do. And so I think the things that they gave me was more like, okay, yeah, it's okay to do this. Oh yeah, like someone who would have no clue is telling me all these things that make sense. All right, then it's okay. Which I know like we shouldn't need, but like just to be human, like I needed that. I needed someone else to tell me that it was okay to do those things and to feel that way. And then it was that permission piece. I think that was the largest thing, coupled with meditating and focusing on your crown to connect, that were the biggest kind of like catapults for me for that reading. Because like once you, as a human, we always like validation. We always like permission to do things. And so permission to make big changes maybe that don't make sense to people, or to like be that person and to be understood. It's like, oh, they get it. They're not just like your best friend telling you this, be like, who've known you. It's someone else. And I think there is sometimes a power in someone else who's not necessarily in your close-knit circle being that for you, that is so powerful.
I completely agree. And honestly, I think that oftentimes, I think that that's what the majority, I think a good healer is going to lead you to your own truth and wisdom. Like that's, a healer should not be telling you something that is like completely out, like all of these things that a good healer does is elicit the truth within you, right? So that's really beautiful. And I'm
Oh, now
yeah.
no, no, like you're saying this is I was trying to think because it was so far back ago, but as soon as you said this, I remembered feeling so semi awkward on the call. And something they told me was that you are not connected to your feminine energy. You're not connected to your sensuality, your sexuality, and there's a big like block in your sacral. And I remember being like, oh my god, this is so true. I was so kind of embarrassed. And at this point, like I would never talk about sensuality. Now here, look what I do. Definitely divine timing. But that was something else big that I was like, I didn't know that that was blocking me. And that was huge when someone like just fully called me out and was like, yeah, you're not connected to your feminine or your sensuality. Like you got to work on that big time. I was like, okay, doing that. That was another big one.
Yeah, what did it look like to tap into that energy and to really express that fully and open up your sacral chakra?
Again, I'm going to go back to like the permission to express that fully. I feel like previous to that, even in the relationship I was with at the time, I was very, you're not allowed to wear that, like that's slutty, that's like you're not allowed to be sexy, you're not allowed to do this. And so I feel like I had just been like shut down so much or like always told I was too much or too this or too that I didn't, again, it just gave me the permission. And I was like at the point where like, screw this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to have the life, to have whatever I want. And I just started owning who I was. And I know that sounds more simple, but oftentimes the hardest thing, and I see this even with my clients, is just allowing yourself to be that version of you and to step into it and discover it. Like, was it a 0 to 100 overnight? No. But it was like, all right, what do I actually desire? Giving my permission to do it and doing it and going with the flow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so big. And I see that with a lot of people too. And it's not, I think as society, it's not easy to own our femininity and to, I mean, it like that just like pains me and hurts me that like you receive those words and those like that's it takes some conscious recoding, right? To like be like, no, like I'm allowed to do all of this and like feel good and not be shamed for it and to have it be like an expression of who I truly am. So
I mean,
mm,
I'm still ashamed for it, but now I just laugh and like, haha, when someone tells me to like stop dancing on Instagram or like stop posting photos of me in my bra or like topless, whatever. I'm like, what are you gonna do?
right. Because there's always gonna be haters, but that's their insecurity.
Exactly.
Right. And that's just them showing that they clearly are not connected to their femininity. And that's sad. And that's sad, right? I don't know. I always am like, why what like does that make you feel good to I don't know. Let me get
I
out.
don't get it either. I mean, I would never, but like, I'm just like, okay, I send you love. I'm gonna keep doing me.
Send you love. I know. That's what I do too. That's what I do too. Do you still do mushrooms?
Not frequently, but like I have done it again since then.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
a time commitment. It is like you have to like it's the integration after, it's the like solid hours of how it's lasting. Sometimes it's just like that's a commitment. And I also feel like as I've developed, I don't necessarily need assistance all the time to go that deep. Once you connect more to your higher self, I feel like I can get answers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point too, because I think at the beginning of I think there's a time and a place. I think there's a time and a place, but I do think that especially the time we're in right now, just like with the heightened energy, it doesn't even feel like we need any substances. Like it just feels like activations are like on a Tuesday
Exactly.
afternoon, you're like blown into the ether.
Is that like just life is like that? You're like, oh, I don't think I need more right now. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Totally, totally. Um, and also, okay, I wanted to ask this at the very beginning too, and I totally forgot. But you brought it up. Remind me. I know that you're a projector. What type are you?
I'm a 5'1" mental projector.
Oh, 5'1". So that's when the numbers are reversed like that. It means that Oh gosh, I just was learning about that the other day. Um,
I didn't know it meant something. Oh,
yeah, so it's like karmic versus something like if you have the lower number first versus the higher number first. Um, so I'll have to look it up. I'll send it to you. But I love that it's so fun. So Liv is a projector too, if you're into human design. I am a 3-5 projector, so we both have that five. Um,
yeah, 5 line.
yeah, so I love that. But the three is all about like experimenting and like I have to go and like jump in the hole to experience it. Like people can tell me like don't do it, but I'm like, no, gotta go. I gotta go experience it. And then the five, it's like we want to tell about it, share about it, and help others with it.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I could see that for you.
Yeah, yeah. So okay. Well, I really want to dive into because this has just been such like I brought up at the very beginning, like this whole death rebirth energy, and I feel like this also really ties into what you're dealing with as or what we've been talking about because mushrooms are like they will bring up the parts of you that actually need to die so that you can truly be reborn. And it's not even like a reborn, but it's like literally discovering who you truly are. And that has been very heightened. A, just now with everything going on in the world, and B, with Saturn return. So you just went through your Saturn return, and I just went through mine. So I would just love to hear what this has brought up for you, what this experience has been like for you. And then I really want to dive into how you've been navigating it.
I don't. Am I done my Saturn return? I don't know much about. I know I'm in it. I don't think I'm done yet. I don't know how to tell if you're done it. Maybe I should look it up after this. But I was definitely in it. I don't know if I'm fully. I think maybe the end of this year.
How old are you?
Between that 30, 30, 30.
So yeah, so it happens between 28, 29, and 30. But it's
So I'm
different.
like finished.
You probably are. You probably are. But it's interesting. I'll send you the link. But I know that you were also in the tower, which like I was getting.
100%.
Yeah, I was getting that as well. Which if you're like the tower is for tarot and it's all about death, destruction, like literally the structures in your life, in who you think you are. It's just like the crumbling of them so that things can be rebuilt. And it's so funny because like I know for me, I think I got the tarot or the tower like 3 or 4 times over the past few months. And then I would get the star, which is like the completion of the tower, right? And then I would get the tower again. I was like, oh, more layers, more layers. I guess we're going back. And it's just been this really funny cycle. So, anyways, I would love to just hear what this has been like for you.
You know, it's interesting that you said the Saturn return is like 28, 29, 30. Because we just think about my timeline over the last 2 years, that would make sense how like everything changed. And I think in the Saturn return tarot, basically it is everything in your life changes or goes to shit. Your relationships change, your business will change, your friendships will change, and it basically brings everything to the surface that is not going to be in alignment with that next version of yourself. And it is hard. I am not going to lie. It is hard to be challenged in all these different areas. But I think the biggest thing, and don't get me wrong, I was challenged in every area. If you look at my business 2 years ago versus now, if you look at the relationships I was in versus now, like I even said how I knew at that beginning of that Saturn return, I had to leave that relationship, and that was like a catalyst for me. Friends have changed massively over my Saturn return and tower, and I'm talking about like people who I thought were my best friends, like 6, 7 people drop out of my life. That is hard. It wasn't just 1 or 2, it was 6 or 7. And it was like, why does this keep happening to me? What does it keep happening to me? And you know, as a spiritual person, you have to think about, all right, is it something I'm doing? Is it something I'm putting out to manifest this? And not realizing, oh no, it's actually for me. It's just clearing out as you evolve the things that are not going to serve you. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to navigating either a Saturn return, a tower, a crumbling, whatever you want to think about it, you will make it so much more difficult for yourself and so much longer if you resist. And I wish I'd resisted less. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but like I just resisted so hard and I was fighting against trying to fix it instead of letting things fall away that needed to fall away. And so the biggest thing I would say in terms of navigating it is to literally get yourself to the bottom. Let go of absolutely everything, pull away and audit all aspects of your life, your job, your friendships, relationships, where you live, everything else. I was moving around during this time. I was like, this doesn't feel right. Move here. This doesn't feel right. And I was still like hopping, and it was hard, but it was my resistance towards letting things go that need to fall that made it so much worse. And it's only when you allow things to fully crumble that things can be built up better than they were. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
And it can be overwhelming. But I am also one of those extreme personalities where like go hard or go home. So then when I decided to actually like crumble and let the tower go instead of fighting against it, I let everything go. I let anything that needed to fall away in all aspects of my life. And I think it's about bringing, when you have deeper self-trust, if you can build trust in it's being broken down to be built back up better, that's what you need to do. You need to learn to develop self-trust and have that trust in yourself that you're not going to lose anything. Anything that falls away is not meant for you. So if you fear losing a person or fear abandonment, rejection, then you have to go heal those trauma wounds, right? It's going to bring up things that need to be released for you to be unstuck. So when people come to me, they're like, I feel stuck. I feel like I'm on a losing streak. I'm like, you're not letting go. What you're resist persists. You're in resistance. So look at the areas of your life and look at where you are resisting instead of allowing, even if the allowing isn't super comfortable, if you desire that next level, right?
yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna like push a little deeper. Do you have any examples of this, and like something like very tangibly that like you had to, like, what did that look like for you?
So let's take friends, for example. I had been on that losing streak. I'll call it a losing streak. For like losing all these people in my life, and like, yes, as spiritual people, like we know, like lose what's meant for you. It didn't exactly feel like what you lose isn't meant for you when it feels shitty. And so then I had these people in my life that I thought were my friends, that I thought I had finally found my group. I was like, I had lost all these people. Now I had this great group of girlfriends finally that I've wanted all my life because I'd been bullied when I was little. And I was so excited. And I didn't want to let that go, even though I knew they were not happy for my successes. They were talking behind my back. They were just being like shitty friends. And I knew that energy of me keeping that around was going to translate into all the areas of my life. And that was like a worthiness thing. And like that, me standing up for myself and cutting those people out. And the way I explain it is like, I felt like I was part of the mean girls, and I had to like, when they say it's better to be in the plastics hating life than outside, I felt for so long, well, it's better to be in the plastics hating life because at least I'm in the plastics, right? And it wasn't until I made the hard decision to be the embodiment of what that version of me deserves, which doesn't deserve that. And that required actually stepping away from those people. And it was hard because, as women, we want love and connection. The primary drive of females is love and connection. To step away from that, being like, well, then I'm not going to have any friends. Then I might be lonely. Okay, I'm willing to take that on because this energy does not serve me. And it's better to be lonely for a bit and make space for better to come in and let go of that. And that's the thing. Sometimes people, I feel like, wait for better to come in before they let go of what doesn't serve them, not realizing that you need to create the space for that to come in. And you feel so much better if you just let that go. And I'm not going to lie, it was hard. It felt like literally like I was going to die. Like, oh my God, I'm standing up to this person. Oh my God, I'm setting my boundaries. Oh my God, oh my God. And then you do it and you feel so much better. And now the spaces come in and I have such better people now in my life who actually do support me, who I don't have to dim my light or dim my success, or are not talking stuff behind my back, about me and all that kind of stuff. So like, think about that. Or if it's your relationship, if someone's not treating you the way you want in like your romantic relationship and they're not holding up to your standards, you need to have those tough conversations, and they either need to rise and apologize, or you need to be okay with that interim period of, I'm letting this go, knowing that the space might be vacant. I might feel that vacant space for a while, but let me have enough self-love, self-worthiness, and self-respect to know that better was always going to come in. And if you do not believe that better is going to come in, who taught you that? where did you learn that? And that's maybe where you need to go do some trauma release, do some inner child healing or whatever. Because like I said, it was that little girl version of me. This 30-year-old version was like, this is bullshit. I'm not putting up with this. The little girl just wanted to be part of the group and be included. So I had to do a lot of work with her, give her permission, do some like bullying release in order to have the personal power to get out of this situation. Does that make sense? That example?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good example. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because, especially like for anyone who's on a spiritual journey, I think that it can be really lonely at times because you realize like as you grow, some people aren't going to. And you're going like we need people who are going to be growing with us or who are in the next version that we are growing into, right? And I think that you brought up such a good point, and I know I've witnessed this and seen this in my own life, and especially through this time too, of like we have to create the space first. So often I think it's like, no, I'll do it once this comes in, or I'll do it once I receive it. But it's like we have to learn to be okay with like the spaciousness and the discomfort, right? Of like the space. But then once we have that space, then it's like the universe can drop in things that we've been asking for or better because we've created the space. So I think that's really beautiful that you brought, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. You know,
And
another thing I wanted to ask, yeah, go for it.
something I just want to add about pressure is that you then have to allow that space and not put pressure to fill that space or find something immediately to fill that, because then you're gonna, I always explain it like a hose. You're putting pressure on the hose and you're siphoning the flow of the water. The water stream is not going to be as powerful. If you let go, it's going to be so much more powerful. So it's yes, creating that space, but then not putting the pressure to have more water, abundance, whatever it is, new friends, new relationship, business stuff, you know, whatever to come through, release the pressure.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy. I'm really glad you brought that up. And oftentimes, like the universe delivers things in ways and in time that we don't expect. So it's really like learning to cultivate that trust with the universe, which I think is an everyday like deepening and learning. Really, it has been for me. Um, so I would love to hear like for maybe like in other areas too, like if someone is experiencing like it feels like everything's crumbling, because I think that you know like you and I are both we are both healers, and so like I would love to hear when you find that it's appropriate to like tap into your own gifts and your own like being with yourself versus like outsourcing and like seeking help and guidance of other, whether it's spiritual teachers or healers or friends or like what have you. Like when do you, what does that look like for you, and what types of healing modalities or whatever do you lean on in these times?
My answer is a kind of like a semi complicated when it relates to like my crumbling and tower. I would say when you're crumbling, try to clear out as much of the noise as you can. So anything that you feel like could be potential noise, if that means you withdraw from like going out with all friends so you can evaluate all your relationships, if that means you completely withdraw from your business, like in order to analyze that, do that. However, I do think it's so much harder to do alone, because when someone holds space for you, it can feel sometimes safer to crumble, but not necessarily having people that are crutches and are going to keep you from crumbling. So during me, I had like mentors who were making me crumble, but still held a safe space that allowed me to crumble without me using them as a crutch to not crumble. Does that make sense? So I find that it's always like, to me, it's always useful to have someone knowing and understanding what I'm going through to hold this space to allow me to feel safe. Because oftentimes the feminine can't fully surrender, right? Unless there's a safe masculine container. So to me, I find like healers, mentors to be that masculine container to allow my feminine to fully crumble. And I don't think I could have fully crumbled without being like, all right, you're crumbling. It's okay. You're safe. It's safer to go. It's safer to go deeper, but keep crumbling. and not like enabling my behavior and trying to like spiritually bypass. So I think it's about finding the right person that you feel I can completely crumble and surrender with, that's going to allow me to do that, but aren't going to spiritually bypass or toxic positivity or try to like get you out of it, that isn't actually in a way that's serving you and helping you. Because I think sometimes in this day and age we can get, let's recode, reprogram so we don't feel shitty and like meditate out of it, but you need to feel it. So that's why to me it's about finding that person that resonates, and I think that will definitely be helpful, because it, like you said, it can be really hard to crumble alone, it can be very lonely. So finding a mentor or finding someone who's going to help you do that, I think will serve you and allow you to go deeper, and I think allow you to go through it faster, because it's not comfortable. And I'm someone like, I'd rather go in fast, hard, get it done, let's get out, than dragging it on, because we can be our own worst enemies. So I think if I was in it alone, I would have not fully gone deeper. I would have maybe distracted myself from like fully feeling things or fully like setting those boundaries. It was definitely my mentor who made me stand up to these girls. 100%. I don't think I would have done it, but I was more scared of like coming back and being like, I didn't do it, than to not do it, if that makes sense. So this is where like an aspect of like, oh, someone else like kind of shedding light and like really telling you can actually help you do the tougher things. And I know even with my clients, I'm like, have you done this yet? Have you said this to your husband yet? Have you done it? Can push them where they're unable to push themselves sometimes. And I think that's our humanness coming through. Like having that support to be able to push you where you may not be able to push yourself, I think is where that's going to come in. And this can be so many different modalities. Like I didn't really do energy healing during this period in terms of like using energy to make away the feelings, because I wanted to feel them and get to the bottom of the root. And I think that might have, for me personally, been more of a bypass than actually feeling it for me in that time. But I would say more having someone just hold that space for me to surrender, and whatever that looked like, was the best thing that helped me. And then, like I said, the inner child stuff, like in order for me to cultivate more of the personal power to do that, I had to go back to that, little girl who I saw very clearly on the side of the school, just wanting to fit in. We had to talk to the bully. We had to do that. So inner child definitely helped, because oftentimes the things that are blocking us from setting the boundaries, or like the fear of rejection, abandonment, is stuff that happened on early. Sure, we may have been maybe abandoned in high school or something like that, but there's always probably something before that, whether it was your parents or a childhood age that did that. So I think inner child healing is a huge component to getting the personal power to do so, or to feel safe enough to do the things you need to do as an adult. That I think is huge. Trauma release in general, I think, is huge for whatever kind of like age stuff you were dealing with. If it's a relationship and you're scared of being rejected, and there's someone that you still haven't, released trauma with from high school, I think that can be helpful. So there was aspects I did of that, not that specific one, but like in terms of going back to that version to make her feel safe. And then I would say ancestral and past lives. We always need to heal current life first, but there's always a degree aspect that can also influence in your current life, in terms of like things that are not yours that you're carrying, or maybe it's vows that you would have taken. And I had this thing where I had fear like the floor was going to fall out from under me, or like it was, if I walked on it and I fully stood in my power, that it was going to crumble underneath me. And so I did like some past life regression and past life healing, where, and I didn't know this, but through doing this with someone else, you can see glimpses of your own past life. But I think to really get and release your own past lives, someone needs to vaguely hold space for you, even if you know how to do it yourself. And so I was like walking on the ice, and I had fallen through the ice, and I couldn't get up through the ice, and I was in the water, and so that was like the fear of that. Or for a lot of us, our spiritual gifts, for me stepping into my power and learning to be that version, it was me taking like a vow that like, oh, personal people who are empowered die in the past, and you died for your gifts. So like releasing that past life, that vow you took to not own your power because power would be killed, like that was huge for me. So a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with in my tower and my crumbling was more of like the big stepping into your full power as like, a psychic, a witch, and all this from past lives, but then also the inner child. I would say those are like the two big ones that really moved the needle and needed to be healed so that I could crumble easier. And of course, creating that container that allowed me to crumble.
I think there's so much in there. There's so much. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think, what I really like that you brought up is what you said about energy healing, because I do think that can be really true sometimes. It's like sometimes energy healing can kind of just be like this, like, take it away from me, right? And it can be a form of spiritual bypassing, I think, of just like wanting someone to just like clear the energy. And like that can work for some things. Like, I do think that there is some really powerful energy healing that can clear those blocks that we can't get to sometimes. But I think at what point is it like us not wanting to show up and do the work ourselves? Right. So I'm really, yeah, go ahead.
You know, exactly what you said. And I think even with that, even when energy healing clears out the blocks, the biggest thing for me, also another big one, was actually being the embodiment. Because I've done energy clearing for people, and I can clear your sacral and do up your personal power. Okay, but then you actually need to go be the embodiment and stand your personal power. You can't get off the phone with me and then not. So there is a degree of human, like, you actually need to be the embodiment and do those things. So like when I was doing the inner child healing, we let go of that and I had more personal power. It was still hard to stand up to those friends, quote unquote. It wasn't like, it didn't make it like so easy. I still had a little bit of fear. It was a little bit easier, but I still had to go and do it. It didn't magically solve that situation. So like, yes, it can be helpful, but also be the embodiment is what I'm going to say. And don't use that as a bypass. Use that as, if you need a little bit of help as an aid to have enough to be able to do it and to be the embodiment, sure, but don't, there's always a degree of, like I say, radical responsibility that you need to take that you cannot place on a healer to elicit change in your life. And I can like unclog the pipes, I can clean you out. But like, let's say, you know, if we're thinking about a physical way, you get your arteries cleaned out and then you go eat McDonald's, or do you fill it with nice healthy foods, right? Your responsibility is to not go eat McDonald's, to keep that clear. So that's where being the embodiment. And that's where the hard stuff comes in that people don't necessarily want to do. And that's where I feel like people get held back, is their embodiment.
100%. Yeah, I really agree. I really agree because it's like energy healing can only heal so much, but if you're going to continue to fill it with the same energy, it's like,
yeah,
you're just going to drop right back down and be right where you are. And so it's like, that's where it's like, we have to show up for ourselves as well, because it's like being the healer is like half of it, but then us showing up and continuing the work is the other half. And we really do have to, it's both. It's both. So you talked a lot about inner child healing, and I would love to hear, because I can just like hear people thinking like, what does that look like? Like, how do I do inner child healing? Like, what does Liv do for inner child healing? And you know, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's been showing up a ton for me and my clients, and I think it's one of those like things that like sounds so silly to do, right? But it's one of the most powerful things that we can be doing. So I would just love to hear how that looks like for you.
So to me, inner child healing is going back and rewriting slash giving that child version of you the love or whatever she needed in that moment, in that instance that she didn't get, normally in order to feel safer. Normally, whether it's like a fear of rejection, abandonment, it's all again to feel safe. And I'll go over a couple of things that I think people can like start to do day to day, but I do think to do deep inner child work, it's very hard to hold space for yourself. So I would always recommend, like, if you actually want to get deeper, have someone else guide you through who knows what they're doing to do it. And find someone that you feel safe, again, to be that feminine surrender in the masculine container with. But even think about right now, and I'm sure people listening can think about ways that they didn't receive what they needed when they were little. Either they didn't get the words of affirmation that they needed, or mom and dad weren't big huggers, so they weren't physically affectionate, and all they really want is a hug. So start just becoming aware of what it is that you know your inner child needed that they didn't get, how they felt, if they felt they always had to get A's. Like for me, my mom was very hard on my grades, and if I didn't anything less, it was not good enough. And like that was a huge thing that I healed like a couple of years ago during the start of my journey, right? So like just thinking about, oh yeah, mom and dad, okay, probably used to do this, that made me feel that way. I need, to let her know that she's enough, like she doesn't need to do to receive, again, going back to even feminine energy that we are talking about earlier. And so once you start to become aware of it, then you can start to see it in your everyday life. And then you just ask her what she needs. And sometimes inner child healing is coloring. Sometimes that is watching cartoons. Sometimes that's playing with Play-Doh. Sometimes that's running through the forest like Phoebe on Friends because you're not like trying to look a certain way. Like even my inner child now loves to like bake, or like I colored an Easter picture with stuff from like the dollar store the other day because like that felt fun to my inner child. And it's about letting that play aspect, that inner child, come through in those ways that you felt like you didn't get to fully come through when you were younger. So how can you, you know, do that right now in your life? Where can you show up for her? How can you give her love? And I think, like you said, sometimes we feel silly, but like sometimes I just like tell myself I'm proud of emptying the dishwasher. Or when I do something so like, oh my God, Liv, look what you made. It's so beautiful. Like you would talk to a child. And it feels like ridiculous. I understand. However, it's not ridiculous to the inner child who's still in you, who still needed that, who never got words from mom, you know, about something, or it was never enough, you know? So start being aware and start asking what she needs and allow yourself to do things that kind of feel kiddish and be a kid again. Because it's those elements that are so healing. And you might not think, you know, eating a bowl of cereal, I don't know, watching cartoons is healing. But if that is what like sounds really fun and playful to you, do it. And I always like that, like, if you're a parent, I feel like this is can be a lot easier for you when you have like kid stuff around to actually engage with your kids. So all my parent clients, I'm like, do the crafts with them, play the blocks, like be present with them because that's going to help your inner child too. But even like I did, like I just went to the dollar store, I walked up and down like the craft section of like what felt fun. You know, another day I did those like melty beads, which are like, I don't know if you did this when you were little, those like beads that you put in a design and then you put wax paper and then an iron on top and it melts the plastic beads into a design. I love this.
Oh my God, that sounds so fun.
And one day I thought about this and I was like, this sounds so fun. And so I went on Amazon, I got the stuff and I did it for like 2 hours. And it was so much fun. But like as a 30-year-old might think that that's ridiculous, or it's not like as vibey as getting a green juice and going, I don't know, to like a Pilates class. But that is just as important for your health as that other stuff. Does that make sense?
I'm so glad you shared. I'm so glad you shared all of that because I think that so often people think that, you know, that they need to go and do like spend a lot of money or like go and do like what they see people doing on social media, right? But it's like it can literally be going to the dollar store and getting I'm gonna have to go
buy the fancy stuff too. But like,
yeah.
I don't know how to paint. I don't need to like go to the fancy paint store and buy like $50 paintbrush. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just have fun with it. Or like Play-Doh. Play-Doh's a great thing that you can like play with, and it gets your hands involved. It gets your creativity going. And like when you do those inner child things and you get back to that, your creativity flows, your sacral kind of opens up, and then maybe you get inspiration for something else. If you're an entrepreneur, maybe you get inspiration for like a business idea because you're flowing, because you're in that more imaginative state. Open up your imagination and just like have fun and allow yourself to have fun. Again, permission. I don't think enough people give themselves permission to nourish their inner child because they think it's silly or they're too old for that or they're too grown up and they're being too rigid. Allow yourself to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, something that I've also really noticed during this time that you've really alluded to is it's like healing one area heals other areas too. And so just because we think something isn't related, it most likely is. Everything we're a homogenous, like that's my biggest issue with like traditional medicine and Western medicine. It's like compartmentalized. It's like the mind and the organs and all of these things are separate. But it's like healing your inner child and like playing with craft could help your business. And doing things with friendships can help your romantic relationships and can help your health, right? And so it's like all of these things that we think it's like, oh, those aren't related, but it's like no. So if you feel like you're having one area that's like completely falling apart and like maybe you don't know even like it just feels like too much, like maybe starting with the other area because that energy will carry over to that area because everything is connected. So I'm just so glad that you brought all of that up. And I think that all of those beautiful little just insights and like ideas for people to use for inner child work. I hope that people can find one that lit up their sacral or that lit them up hearing that and go do it. Like go do it because it can be so fun and it can be like it's such a I think that's like when we can take back our own power, right? And like do these things that might seemingly seem, you know, unrelated and like they're not going to help us, but that can really be like the healing that our body is asking for. And also just kind of like get us out of all of the mind chatter and into our body and into the experience of it, right? So this has been so beautiful. And I'm just so grateful for you coming on, you sharing more about this. I feel like there's like a million more questions I want to ask you and so many more things that we could talk about, but we will save that for another time. So Liv, where can we connect with you further?
So the probably easiest thing is just Instagram at Keep Up with Liv. You can follow me there, ask me any questions. I love questions. I think it's my 5 line. And also it's a projector. I need to wait for the invitation. So ask me your questions, because like if you ask me a question, I get really excited and I'll go off. So I'm happy to help if you feel like you need other guidance or you need help directing what else that you can do. But also just comments. I feel like I share so many good tidbits that you could share. And then I also have a podcast where you can kind of learn more about what I'm talking about. And like, I've gotten so many DMs from people who like have just changed their lives listening to the podcast. So like start there, listen to the podcast and follow me on Instagram. And if you have any other questions further than that, do not be shy.
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just thank you for having me. I feel like this was such a wonderful conversation this afternoon, as it always is with you. But I feel like we really touched on some good things that, I think sometimes it's easy to listen to a podcast and be like, oh yeah, I should do that. But I'm going to say, now that you've listened to this episode, go and do the things that we've talked about. Go do a life audit, go to the dollar store and pick something for your inner child this weekend and actually do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. I could not agree more. Yes, everything was so good. It was so wonderful chatting, and go follow Liv. And until next time, I am sending you all infinite love and light.